Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Lynn Crocker. I'm the Industry Programming Manager here at TIFF, and I'd like to welcome you to our second session of the day, a look inside Sesame Street short film and animation process. Sesame Street has been on the air for over 40 years now and holds a very special place in a lot of our hearts, or probably all of our hearts. But more than that, the show is a global leader in children's content, tackling sensitive and difficult issues, and arming our children with tools of resilience, tolerance, and empathy. Our guest today will take you inside the process of creating some of the short films and animated content that we see on Sesame Street. And this afternoon at 3 p.m., 8 talented content creators will have the opportunity to pitch their idea for a short film to our speakers. So best of luck to the pitchers for this afternoon. Now please join me in welcoming from the Sesame team, film producer Kimberly Wright and Assistant Director of Content Susan Shiner.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. We hope to give you an inside look at how we commission the short films and animations for this show today. And we thought to start things off, we're currently airing season 47, and we'd just give you a little peek at what season 47 looks like. And for some of you who maybe don't have small kids and haven't seen the show in a while, it probably looks a little different than what you might remember. So take a look at this. So our show is broken down into several segments, and recently, well, about 3 seasons ago, we actually moved from a 1-hour format, which you probably mostly remember, to now it's a 30-minute format, and that was in an effort to try and stay competitive with the other kids programming out there. So it's definitely more streamlined, more condensed, and that's affected our commissioning, what films and animations we commission. But this just gives you a little view of how the different segments are. We have an intro, we have a Sesame Street narrative, which is basically our Elmo street story, and that kind of sets the tone for the rest of the episode. So, for example, if that's about Elmo getting a pet dog, that will affect the films and animations that are commissioned for that show. So, for example, if Elmo gets a pet dog in the street story, I'll need to find a D is for dog letter film to fill in the letter block. And then the number block might also be a film that has to do with dogs, would be the overall theme. So it might be counting to 12 dogs, for example. So it really kind of is a very focused thematic show. We also have a Cookie Monster format, and we're actually now just doing a new Cookie Monster segment, which I can't tell you too much about, but it involves teaching kids about where food comes from in a really fun way, so you'll be seeing that for season 48. And then Elmo's World, that's another segment towards the end of the show. That's also a newer format called Elmo's Wonderful World. And we also commission live action footage, live action montages that go into that segment as well. Then, okay, we have our curriculum.
So before we talk about season 47 and specifically our film process and how we do what we do, I wanted to give you a little bit of context for understanding Sesame Street and how we do it. So the show was born in 1969, and it was started by a woman named Joan Gans Cooney, and she was really a visionary. She had this idea for a wall-less classroom, and those were her words, that would educate using the techniques and appeal of commercial television. Her goal and her dream was to reach all children, but she specifically targeted children of color and children that come from a low-income home. She felt that this television show could be the great equalizer, and it would provide the building blocks that were needed to prepare these kids to make the transition from home to school. So she had a dual objective, and it was to both educate and to entertain. And as she always said, if you can't reach them, you can't teach them. So it was very critical that the show be creative and fun and use music and celebrities and furry monsters, but also have a very strong curricular backbone. So in order to do this, she met with researchers at Harvard. She pulled in her friend Jim Henson, and they came up with this unlikely collaboration between creatives who are filmmakers and writers and producers that rely on intuition and taste and experience, and researchers and educational people that worked in education that relied on data. This marriage of these two components became what we call the Sesame Street model. So if you look over to the circles, this is what makes us so unique. So there are really three components. We have production, which is Kim, and the other producers that produce the street segments, which, as Kim mentioned, are the things that are on the actual set. So the human cast, Big Bird, Cookie Monster, Grover, all of that makes up our production. Then we have content, which is me, and my department's made up of psychologists and educators, and we are the keepers of the curriculum. So Sesame Street was born with the curriculum 49 years ago, and the curriculum has grown and changed every year. And every season when we add a new curricular focus, it's a new experimental season. Sometimes we just add, sometimes we tweak, we very rarely remove. And I'll talk a little bit more about that curriculum in just a second. And the third component is that research component. We do two types of research at the workshop. We do formative and we do summative or evaluative. Formative research is how we pull in the voice of the children as we're producing. So for the street segments, when we get a script from one of our writers, we will sometimes turn that into a storybook, and we'll have one of our in-house illustrators draw some pictures. We'll turn that script into sort of a book. We'll run out to a couple of daycare centers and we'll read it to the kids, and then ask them questions about what they're understanding, about the characters. Did they get the gist of the educational message? And then we'll tweak the script. And if it's something that's really boring or they don't get it or they're not paying attention, we'll change it. So that's how research impacts production as we're forming it. And then we have this evaluative component, which is once everything is done, we then bring it back out into the field. And oftentimes we commission a large-scale study where we'll look at kids' reaction to the show across the country. And then and across the world, actually. And then we get a sense of, has learning occurred? Because it's very important that we see measurable change. So that's the Sesame Street model. And then the other thing that makes us unique is what we call the whole child curriculum. And that's what our whole show is based on. We don't focus just on letters and numbers. We really look at the whole child and what the child needs. So we look at academic skills, we look at cognitive reasoning, we look at social and emotional development, and we look at health and other topics that are related to the mental health of children, such as lots of special topics we've done over the years: death, divorce, our new autistic Muppet Julia. So we look at the children as a whole, and we try to figure out what they need. This is a little bit more information on our whole child curriculum. So as you can see, we have literacy, which is teaching the kids their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. And that's not only just what the letters look like, but it's what the letters sound like and what words those letters start. So if we're teaching a letter film, it's important that we get those three components. We want to see what the letter S looks like, what the letter S sounds like, and we want to hear a word that the letter S starts. So we try to put all of those elements into everything. Vocabulary, rhyming, reading and writing fundamentals, and also Spanish language. We have our math curriculum, which is numbers, counting, measurement, addition, subtraction, and patterns. Science and STEM specifically, we've really stepped into the STEM world a couple of seasons ago, and we continue to develop that. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And STEAM, which is the integration of the arts into STEM. So looking at how science impacts music, dance, visual arts, and teaching those things through the arts. Health, nutrition, healthy habits for life, hygiene, body parts and senses, and also how important it is to rest and relax. And finally, this whole area of self-regulation and executive function is sort of interwoven throughout our social and emotional curriculum. And this is very important. We found out several years ago that preschool teachers, when given their choice of what they would rather have their kids start with, letters and numbers, or the ability to sit and raise their hand or take a deep breath, they said, please, the kids need to know how to sit, how to relax, how to understand, how to wait, patience, task persistence, working memory, planning. These are the things that kids are not starting preschool with or not starting school with. So we spent a lot of years working through self-regulation and executive function, and we have really woven those things throughout the curriculum. So this is just a sense of where we are and what the whole child curriculum looks like. As Kim mentioned, we are airing season 47 right now. So if you turn on HBO or in the States PBS, you'll see season 47, and that focuses kindness. We just wrapped up production of season 48, which is cultivating cultural competencies, which is a fancy way of saying diversity. We relooked at our diversity curriculum, which diversity has always been a part of Sesame Street, right from the start. You know, we've always had Muppets of many colors and people of all different races interacting and loving each other positively on the street. Back in the early 90s, we looked at what we could do to make that more explicit, and we spent 4 years developing, really blowing out a race relations curriculum. And then we looked back at it at season 48 to see what else we could do, because clearly we're not there yet. So those shows are wrapped up in production, and they will air next season. And now we are planning for season 49. The topic is, if I see it, I can play it, and I can become it. And it'll have some catchier topic once we figure it out. But we just we are just working through that now, and that's basically play. So, you know, teaching kids about imaginative play and playing what you want to be when you grow up and things like that. So we're in the process of developing that now. And then a season 50, which
it's a big anniversary.
Is a big one. So we're talking about that now and what we're going to do for our 50th. So before we talk about season 47, I just want to talk for a second about our development process. So this is the way our curriculum cycle looks. So first we do an assessment of educational need. So we look out into the world and we say, what do kids need? You know, we read popular literature, we talk to teachers and principals and professors, we talk to lots of people within the company, not just people on our production staff, but people that work with our apps and our games and our web design, and we try to figure out what is a topic that needs to be kind of developed and pushed out, and where do kids need help. So we pick a topic, and then in my department, we are not experts on any one thing, but we will find the experts out there. So we go and we read a lot of journals, we talk to professors, we really reach in deep to academia, and we find the PhDs and the people that are teaching the college courses, and we bring them in. And we hold a big curriculum seminar for our writers and our producers and our filmmakers. Everybody's invited in, and we learn. We spend a day learning what the professors and the doctors have to say about whatever the particular curricular focus is. Then they leave, and then we come up with the curricular goals. So how do we take all of that academic stuff and turn it into something that filmmakers and writers can use to make their magic? And we come up with a document. It's added into our giant curriculum document, and there's goals. So we mentioned that season 47 that's airing now, our curricular focus is kindness. We learn, research showed that parents and teachers were very concerned that the world was not a kind place. And when interviewed, they felt that kids now were more disrespectful than respectful. And that was a big thing. That was a big issue. So we decided that we were going to do kindness. We worked with our advisors. We brought in some fabulous people that talked about how to teach kids to be kind, to develop empathy, to be a good friend, to be mindful. And they said to be kindful. You know, this is this whole notion of mindfulness and how to wrap in kindness into it. And we came up with some curriculum goals, and you will see evidence of those goals in the films that we're going to show you in a little while. But things like it not only makes other people feel good when you're kind, it makes you feel good when you're kind. So you get something out of it. If somebody's crying, if a friend is crying, offer them a tissue. If somebody feels sad, give them a hug. If somebody's carrying something heavy, offer to help. And sometimes it could be just as simple as saying, "How are you?" So we came up with a lot of these curriculum goals, and that's when we determined our educational objectives. we produced our show segments and our films, did some formative research while we were producing to make sure that we were on track with the kids. Everything kind of wrapped up. We distribute it, and then next season we'll do a summative evaluation and see if it worked. And it's really hard to measure some of these things. It's really hard to measure, did kids get kinder after they watched? So it'll be challenging, but we're optimistic. We feel very proud of the things that we produced for this season, and you'll get a chance to see it in a minute. Kim mentioned we went to a 30-minute show format a couple of seasons ago. When we went to the 30-minute format, we also made a big change in how we put together our shows. We went to a topic-based approach. So the Sesame Street that you all are probably familiar with is what we call this magazine format, which was quick clips that, it had a story arc, and then you could see letter films and number films and health and geography and ecology and all different kinds of things all mushed together in an hour. But we learned from research that attention and comprehension is much better when it's tied to a theme. Kids are used to that in their preschools. Everything is basically a project-based approach, all wrapped tight to a theme. And we can teach anything by using themes. And that's really what we went to. So the show became much tighter. And we don't have all that wiggle room. We were talking yesterday. We used to be able to produce a film about a wild card.
Yeah,
like if we saw a film that we loved, right,
know.
that was on anything, we could do it, and we could just throw it in, but we can't do that anymore.
We don't have the space to do that. It's very specific.
It's tight.
In that 30 minutes.
So we look for things that are specific to our theme, and this is just a sense of, it gives you a picture of what some of our themes were for season 47. And we can weave in that whole child curriculum in any of these themes. So if the theme, for instance, is space, our story arc will be space. Our letter films will be about the letter S, and our number film could possibly be about counting stars or counting planets, rocket ships, whatever. So we will weave in that whole child curriculum using these themes and topics. And every season, this is 47, 48 has a new set of topics and themes, and 49 will have a new one. And they're all child-based. They all come from things kids are used to seeing in their preschools, because we find that's the best way to make them learn. And that's really what we're all about.
And not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. This is a never-ending chart that we have that really gives us a sense on how much time is in the show. Do we need to fill any holes in the show? But it's a grid that we refer to a lot, and this is our format chart. We also have in several of the episodes something called Kindness Cam, which is, again, just to reiterate and to focus on that being kind aspect. It's recapping something kind that happened in the show and trying to get kids to remember. Do you remember when you saw something kind that happened? And it recaps, and it's a little tiny piece of footage that shows a kind act happening. So that's sort of a new addition to the show as well. Just before I talk a little bit about the actual process, our commissioning process, we just wanted to show you some of our favorite films and animations, a little sizzle reel. Just to give you an idea. And basically, just to walk you through the way we commission the films, it's done on an RFP basis. So about 3 to 4 times per season, I will send out a request for pitch document to about anywhere from 12 to 15 or so filmmakers, animators, production companies. It's really open to everyone. There's no certain criteria. We have people who are, we have large-scale companies. We have documentary filmmakers. We have animation professors. We have a host of people who pitch to us. And filmmakers are given about 2 to 4 weeks to develop their pitches and submit them. And again, we're looking for those thematic, letter and number based films. B is for butterflies, D is for dog, T is for turtle, that sort of thing. In terms of what your pitches should include, it's really spelled out well in the RFP. We want a sense of what your overall idea is. What is it? How are you going to teach this letter or number? A budget. Our budget, we still are a nonprofit, so our budgets aren't big budgets. They're roughly $10,000 per minute. And our films are about a minute, but it's a case-by-case basis. Everything is, done separately. So we realize that some productions are going to involve more than others. Please send us a development timeline. We let you know when our films are, when we need the film delivered by, so we just want a rough idea of showing your production schedule. And, keep it visual. We need to see a storyboard sample, illustrations, give us some character design options, really give us more than just like a one pager. We want to make it as visual as possible. And then we all get together after the pitches are submitted. It's the producers and then our research and curriculum folks. A bunch of us collaborate, and we have to review usually a stack of pitches, which takes some time, so a couple of weeks at least to kind of decide which films we're going to greenlight. And then once we decide who we're going with and who we're going to enter contract agreements with, it's about, I would say filmmakers have about 2 to 3 months on average to get their film done. That's just a rough average, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. And important to know that the films that are done, they're all done as works for hire, so the film is then owned by Sesame Workshop, as far as all the rights and ownership goes. In terms of what makes a good pitch, again, just to recap, we really, you want to make it very well thought out and developed. Again, not a one-pager. Keep it as thought out as you possibly can, as much detail as you can. And simple. Really, don't try and do too much. A lot of times, we have to remind our filmmakers and animators that our audience are 2 to 4 year olds, so keep the language simple. Don't try to overdo it. A lot of times, especially with a letter film, for example, like let's say it's about T is for turtle. If that's the letter and theme, it's a lot of people choose to say like, it's Tommy the turtle who lives in Turkey, and they try to overuse that letter.
Or we had the V is for vegetable.
Right.
And the first draft of that film, I think he put in like 60 vegetables.
60 vegetables, right.
And remember, we want to see it when they say it, so it would have been like super crazy, so,
Think about pacing.
And that we're shooting for like 2 to 3 year olds.
Yes, exactly. And then keep it visually appealing. That is crucial to your pitch, to give us as much sample animation. If it's a live action pitch, give us photos of potential kids who you might put in the film, that sort of thing. And then include links to where you got your inspiration, whether that's a link to a musical choice that you're kind of a sound that you're going for musically. Send us a link to that. A shooting style, a specific creative, shooting style that you saw somewhere. Send us a quick link. We need to really be able to wrap our mind around how this film is going to look. And then what we like to call the wow factor, is because it's really hard. Sometimes we'll get 6 pitches on the same letter film. Let's say, for example, D is for dogs. I think we really did get 6 pitches on that one, and they were all great. It wasn't that it was hard to decide which one should be the one to go with. So what's going to set your D is for dog pitch apart from the other 5? What's going to really wow us? So you really want to think about that as well. And then just quickly some don'ts. We keep the Muppets, separate from the films. So not to incorporate any Sesame Street characters or Muppets in the pitch. We try to encourage you to not use AFTRA or union actors or AFM band and musicians, just to keep it clean and entities to themselves. And we really like original compositions. On rare occasions, we will, let a filmmaker go with already existing music and get licensing for it. But we prefer, for you to factor into your budget, a composer fee, and make that part of your delivery. And not to use already existing or licensed characters. If you're a filmmaker and you have, or an animator, for example, and you have this great animated character that you've always wanted to create a book series for, that's not the character to then pitch or to put into your Sesame Street pitch. You want to create a separate character altogether for us. And lastly, a textless version is required for all films and animations. So think about that when you're creating your film, not to have words or letters embedded in a way that they can't be removed easily, like children holding up letters to something. We've had that happen before, and then the filmmaker didn't shoot something else to go in place of that shot, so it was a little dicey with trying to do a textless version of that film. And the textless version we want so that your film can be shown internationally. So that's a really important deliverable. And we're going to show you in more detail some full films so that you can see some of our live action, animation, mixed media, and a stop motion example. We just want you to see some of our favorites from the past few seasons, as well as the level of production quality that we're looking for. So, okay. That's it, folks. We'd love to Thank you. We'd love to open it up to questions. If you guys have some questions, I know there'll be a mic coming around.
Move it to the center so
Sure,
everyone
sure.
can see us. So, yep, right here.
Hi there. I'm just wondering if you want your producers to come to you with the curriculum component embedded into the pitch, or if that's something you work with them to form to match your curriculum.
Yes. Yes. We would like you. Yeah. Oh. So yes, we would like you to, when you pitch, to have the curricular component in it. We'll help you. We'll tweak it. We'll help you with exactly how we were just like kind of reliving some of the interesting moments of those, like how to do the sounds. That's always a big thing. There's a way that we have to make those sounds. Like it can't be guh. It has to be guh. So we'll help you with your VOs. Like we've sat in on a lot of VO sessions just to make sure that things are right. But if you could just put it in there.
Yeah, and when you get when you're pitching, you'll know we give you curriculum points that'll be listed. So if it says D is for dog, we'll list a series of curriculum points so you'll know kind of what you should be targeting in that pitch. Yep.
In the center here.
Yep. Oh, okay.
Hello, thank you. Aida here. Just have a question. Have you worked with anybody that gave you multiples? So, for example, the people who did the fruit for the animation, did they come back and do another letter for you in the same style?
We've commissioned. No, it's usually if it's a new filmmaker or a new production company, we'll start with one. But once we've worked with you, some of them lend themselves to more of a series. Like for example, the letter G that you saw, that mixed media one, that's actually a Canadian company, Cup of Coffee, who did that, if any of you are familiar with them. So they did letter G and they did W was the other one. They did R,
We
but
did
a whole slew, but
them.
two of the G and the W were the same style film. They did R's for Recess, remember, and they've done several. So we'll come back to you time and time again if we like your films. So it becomes more of a relationship, an ongoing relationship with a lot of companies. So when I send out the RFP, I'm usually sending it to about half of the people on my list will be people that we've worked with before, and I'm always trying out new filmmakers and production companies as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Gareth.
Hi.
I noticed there are a lot of international films. Do you focus on having a certain number of international filmmakers produce films every season? It's,
our filmmakers come from all over the country and the world. So yes, we don't have a set number per se. And again, that was a little bit of a different twist. That was a film by Rick Marecki, The H is for Homes. He is an Australian filmmaker that does a lot of travel. He works for, I think it's STA Travel. And so he's usually on big tours of the world for other projects for months at a time. We unfortunately don't have the budget to pay anyone to go around the world. So, it kind of works out. We've worked with him in the sense of he's going to be in 13 countries. He's like, I'll get kids playing in 13 countries.
Or jumping. He did a jump film for us where he got, kids jumping all over the world.
And that was for Homes, and that's how that one was done. But as far as in general, yes, our filmmakers, we have Australia, South Africa, Germany, the UK, Jamaica, the Caribbean, everywhere. So we're always looking for new filmmakers to add to our list. So
just like we focus on diversity on the show, we focus on diversity behind the scenes of the show.
Yes, definitely. Who else?
Hi. My name's Jesse. I'm from Junior Mojo. We're a new internet kids show. And I just wanted to ask you if you could speak briefly just about, like, one thing, I love your website for sure, and you guys have done a lot of internet stuff lately. And I just wondered if you could speak briefly about maintaining the integrity of the curriculum and the educational elements in the world of the internet with clickbait and really trashy shows for kids and all that.
So the same process that exists for the show also exists for our web-based, anything that's on the web. So, and on YouTube, everything is all tied up in the same whole child curriculum and the whole, marriage between, production and research. So I work specifically with the show, but there's one of me that works specifically with everything that goes on the web. So everything is reviewed, every wireframe. I mean, I worked on a project a couple years ago with Connect. We did a game with Microsoft Connect, and it was a interactive, highly interesting voice recognition. It was super cool, but everything was. I sat in those 6 to 8 hour reviews with every jump and every throw and everything is held to the same standard that we hold the show to.
Do you post your RFPs somewhere, or do you only send them out to specific producers that you know of ahead of time?
Yeah, we only send them out to specific producers ahead of time.
In which case, what is the process for someone who's interested in perhaps like submitting pitches at some point? How do you get on that list? What does that look like?
Sure. Well, I'd be more than happy to get your information if you're someone that's here. Get your information, and I would ask you to send me some samples of your work. If you can direct me to anything that you've done, and once we take a look at that, we'll hopefully be able to invite you to pitch. So, but yeah, we take referrals. If you have a filmmaker friend, a friend who owns a production company that you think would be a great candidate, just basically shoot me an email, and I can give you guys cards. So.
And Kim always shows us a clip of the week.
Oh, yes,
so
I do.
So whenever we have a review, we review our films and animations twice a week. Mm-hmm. We have a cycle that we do. We sit down and we review things, whether it's a pitch or a storyboard or an animatic or a rough cut or whatever. And at the end of all of those meetings, Kim shows us something fun she finds online.
Yes,
so.
I might have just found someone might have sent it to me. I might have seen it on Vimeo or wherever, and it might be, or someone that I've met at a festival, and I want to just share it with the rest of the team, and I'll say, what do you think? I'm going to invite this person to pitch. I just met them at the, Chicago International Kids Film Fest or at TIFF or wherever I happen to be. So
we find some of those wow moments just like that.
Yes.
So we actually do. We kind of look at YouTube too.
Yeah.
I think I saw another hand over here.
Hi, my name is Kristen. I just wanted to know how often you guys refresh your content. Like, if you do a letter film, how many times will that air?
Well, it stays in the library.
It stays forever.
Forever, yeah.
But there are definitely rules for how often things are reused. So the show airs on PBS and it airs on HBO, but it's not the same show that's airing. So you may see something from this season on HBO, but something from last season or the season before on PBS. So when we're building shows, there's a rubric that they use that things should not be recycled or reused more than X number of seasons, but that doesn't mean you won't see it, only because things are, PBS stations are able to sort of come up with their own rules, and so we can only control so much. But when we build a show, which was that crazy chart that we showed you before, things will not be reused more than, we like it to seem fresh.
Yeah.
And also, a lot of our material is not in HD, which now we try to put everything I think is in HD. So we have a large part of our library that we can't use.
Yeah, we can't go back to season 36 and show or even 40 and show a film necessarily.
Right,
now,
because
unfortunately.
it's just not.
It might exist online somewhere, but
Yeah, it definitely exists online. I think YouTube has, the majority of our library, like 48 years worth of segments. But in terms of the show, we can only go back so far. It just doesn't look good.
Sometimes we'll just talk internally too. Like, let's say we're doing a number film. We'll say like, okay, we have a number 3, but it's cutting kind of all. We think we need a fresh number 3, and I'll put a number 3 on the RFP as opposed to a 13 because maybe we really liked our number 13 film better, and we should show it again one more time.
Or the kids, like they're wearing clothes or something else that kind of dates them. We don't want to do that. So it really depends on what it looks like.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one or two more questions.
I was wondering if you could talk about maybe a specific research example that then translated its way into the curriculum, like something that you found on the research side of things that then became how that manifests itself in the show.
I can give you a good example for that. So many, many years ago, we did a show on divorce. And we decided to divorce. You know, we have done love, marriage, pregnancy. We had done sort of like all adoption, you know, these kind of big topics. So when we did divorce, we worked with an incredible advisor. She wrote the book on how to help kids through a divorce. And we were so proud of the script. We were divorcing Snuffy's parents, and it was just, the advisor loved it. It was perfect. We shot it. It was great. We were so happy. But because of the nature of the topic, we took the show out to test before it aired. We took it to 4 daycare centers. In every daycare center, the kids cried. It's like we ruined kids. I mean, it was just like we were so upset. We actually had to go back and like make sure that we were okay. But they, after viewing that show, even though we thought it was so fantastic, they did not think that Snuffy and his sister Alice were going to be cared for. They didn't think that they would have a place to live. They thought the parents were fighting and they didn't love each other anymore, and they didn't love Snuffy anymore, and it was a mess. So the decision was made to kill the show. So we put all this money into researching and writing and producing and finishing it. It was completely done, and it never aired. That was back in the early 90s. So we walked away from divorce for many, many years. Then about maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, we revisited it. But this time, instead of revisiting it for a general population, we revisited it for a target audience. So through a resiliency project that we have that goes out specifically to daycare providers and Head Start providers and people that work with kids, we redid divorce, and this time we divorced Abby's parents. Now, I don't know if any of you know Abby, but she's a fairy, and she's very light and airy, and she's pink and blue and purple, and she flies, and she has magic. And Snuffy, on the other hand, is like big and clunky, and his affect is low, and he looks kind of sad just in his resting state.
And he was really sad at the divorce.
Right. But Abby is like this very like kind of light character. So we redid divorce with Abby. And it was enormously successful. I mean, it was basically the same messages, but we learned so much the first time. And the second time we did it, and we prepared a kit that went along with it, so that there was discussion and there was talking points for teachers and social workers that could actually work with the kids. So that's like a grand example of like a research finding that actually impacted a whole curricular area. But we have like little things that we find, like we'll tweak a character in development. When we were developing the character Zoe, who was one of our first female Muppets, we took her out in the field and she's orange. Like our writers did not want to make a pink Muppet back then. And so they wanted to make her orange, but the kids didn't know that she was a girl. Mm-hmm. They didn't read, orange did not read as a girl color. So we put barrettes in her hair. She still has barrettes in her hair. Same barrettes. And so that was the cue that the kids told us that would tell them that she was a girl. So we tweak everything. We get that little kid voice in every single thing that we can possibly do.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all the time that we have for today, but I'd like to thank you so much, Kimberly and Susan, for coming and sharing this with us today. And thank you all. We'll see you for the next session.
Thank you.